Welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Chris. If you have Netflix, you may know that there is a new Godzilla movie out. And the reason this one is unique, it's because it's Japan's first animated Godzilla movie. That's right, it's an anime, but it's a full-length movie. I don't know what number it is out of all the Godzilla movies, but at this point it's something like 30 or 31. I love Godzilla. I think it's such a fun character. I love all the movies, good or bad. They're all fun. And aside from the movies, we've got lots of comic books, US comic books, that have adapted Godzilla. We have Marvel, Dark Horse, IDW currently has the license. All of them have had prominent runs with the character. But I want to talk about Marvel's run in the Bronze Age, 1977 to 1979. For 2 years, Marvel had the rights to Godzilla. And they didn't just do an adaptation. They inserted it 100% into their superhero universe. So you've got Godzilla interacting with all of their big characters. And that kind of crossover and the mix of sci-fi ideas, 100% in keeping with the Godzilla movies of the time. Let's establish some background. Marvel's Godzilla book was almost entirely illustrated by Herb Trimpe, well known as a popular interest on The Incredible Hulk, and he's a good fit for this idea, although we'll talk about how on-model Godzilla himself is as we review the comics. And it was all written by Doug Moench, well known for his runs on Batman, including Nightfall, where his back was broken by Bane, the co-creation of characters like Deathlock and Black Mask, and a well-regarded 8-year-long run on Master of Kung Fu. The comic came out at the end of Godzilla's Showa period. There have been 4 eras of Godzilla, with large breaks between so that the audiences didn't get burned out. The first era was known as the Showa period, named after the Japanese emperor at the time, and it ran from 1954 through 1975. Godzilla vs. Megalon was the popular Godzilla movie in the US at the time. Not all of the movies got released over here, but that one came out in 1976. It was later shown on TV, hosted by Belushi, and ultimately it fell into the public domain here in 1980. There was also a Hanna-Barbera cartoon in 1978 that may have influenced some of the second half of the comics run. But let's quickly examine the entire 2-year run to see some of the Godzilla movie tropes and how they may have been utilized in the Marvel comics with the superheroes. And spoiler, we don't get his iconic music or roar because this is printed material. Why did you expect that? All right, let's read it. The story begins with Godzilla breaking out of an ice shelf up in Alaska, although that doesn't match with any specific movie. It's just the starting point for this story, which will see Godzilla rampage across the United States. Trimpe's take on Godzilla is recognizable, but doesn't match the movie look exactly. He has longer teeth, a long tongue, and red eyes. His dorsal fins are a bit smaller, and his arms are a bit bigger. Still, it's Godzilla. Godzilla rips up the oil pipeline and lays waste to the area, using it like a whip. Godzilla using tools indicates he's smarter than the average animal. And I think that matches up with the Godzilla as shown in the movies at the time, where he'd even do celebratory victory dances. Intelligent creature. Nick Fury, the leader of s.h.i.e.L.D., is tasked with stopping Godzilla, and he does what any good boss would do. He instantly delegates it to his second-in-command, Dum Dum Dugan. Because that's who you want in charge of capturing Godzilla, right? A guy named Dum Dum Dugan? Because Fatso McRetard was busy that week. Still, the team on s.h.i.e.L.D. is way more interesting than the average human characters in a Godzilla movie, which can often be the weak part of the movie. Sometimes that can be boring. s.h.i.e.L.D., it's a lot more interesting. And the supporting cast is surprisingly progressive. We've got Gabe Jones, who was Marvel's first black character, and Jimmy Woo, who was actually their first Asian character before they were even Marvel Comics, back when they were Atlas Comics. So it's kind of interesting having that diverse group be in charge of capturing Godzilla. Along with s.h.i.e.L.D. is the Japanese scientist Dr. Yuriko Takaguchi, who works at Tony Stark's company. his assistant, Tamara Hashioka, and inexplicably, Takaguchi's grandson Rob, who thinks Godzilla might be a hero. We hit a lot of tropes right off the bat. We've got Godzilla crossing over with the Marvel Universe, and a lot of his movies featured him crossing over with other movie monsters like Rodan and Mothra, who had their own movies. We've got the Japanese scientist and the completely ineffective military. That's in pretty much every Godzilla movie. So, yeah, it definitely hits a bunch of the movie tropes, even in comic book form. How ineffective is the military? Well, S.h.i.e.L.D.'s first idea is sending out soldiers on little flying Segway scooters. Meanwhile, Takaguchi relays Godzilla's origins, being created by an atomic bomb test in the Pacific Ocean. But strangely, for the rest of the comics run, everybody seems to refer to Godzilla as a dinosaur. Pretty strange. Still, they're hitting that trope of science gone awry, which I think is at the very core of what Godzilla is. In the second issue, Takaguchi talks about Godzilla trashing Japan for 2 decades, and we see him battling some other giant monsters. It is a little strange that both S.h.i.e.L.D. and Marvel's superheroes seem to know about Godzilla and about how he's been attacking Japan for 20 years, but they really don't bother to do anything until he hits America. Also, the monsters Godzilla is shown fighting are not from any of the movies. Those rights were not acquired by Marvel, and it's kind of a shame to not have popular kaiju like Mothra or King Ghidorah appear. Instead, every monster Godzilla fights in this run will sort of be knockoffs that look like they were picked up at the dollar store. By issue 2, Godzilla has made his way down to Seattle and is about to destroy the Space Needle when S.h.i.e.L.D. flies out in different flying Segway scooters. This time, they're able to draw Godzilla away with bright lights. It is interesting to note Godzilla's size. If he's just above the Space Needle, that means he's over 600 feet tall. In the first movie, Godzilla was said to be a little over 100 feet tall, and in the latest movie, Shin Godzilla, where he's the biggest he's ever been, he's just under 400 feet tall. So this Godzilla in the Marvel Comics is easily the biggest version of Godzilla ever, and that's pretty cool. In issue 3, Godzilla swims from Seattle to San Francisco. Their local superhero team at this point was the bizarre group of leftovers known as the Champions. It had surplus X-Men Angel and Iceman, Hercules, Black Widow, Ghost Rider, and the Russian superhero Darkstar. She and Ghost Rider are apparently too busy to help this week, so the rest of the heroes get in the Champ's craft and instantly get swatted around by Godzilla. It's pretty hilarious how Angel just gets knocked out in 2 seconds, but it's equally badass when Hercules saves him from getting crushed under Godzilla and upends the beast. We never actually get to see the Hulk fight Godzilla in this run, so Hercules is pretty much second best. That is, until Hercules throws some of the Golden Gate Bridge at Godzilla, totally whiffs, and it takes out Dum Dum Duggan's helicarrier. Godzilla moseys along while everyone recovers from that. In issues 4 and 5, the scientists work at Stark to build a secret weapon while a new supervillain steps in to fight Godzilla. His name is Dr. Demonicus, and he actually does show up in Marvel after the Godzilla run, battling Iron Man and the West Coast Avengers. He even says in an issue of Iron Man that takes place after the Godzilla run that he's captured and mutated his greatest enemy, implying his mutated monster is Marvel's continuing version of Godzilla. Demonicus has mutated his own giant monsters who look like someone had to create rip-off versions of Godzilla's enemies in a couple hours with the lights turned off. Godzilla kills them all and S.h.i.e.L.D. arrests Demonicus and frees some enslaved Eskimos, actually accomplishing something for the first time. Issue 6 reveals what the scientists are working on, a massive robot to battle Godzilla. If they can't have Mechagodzilla and they're going to build something like that, I'd say the place that built Iron Man is probably the best place to create it. Meanwhile, Godzilla conveniently takes a nap in the Northern California forests, so S.h.i.e.L.D. gasses him to sleep, but before the issue is over, Godzilla has already escaped. As the Blue Oyster Cult's Godzilla song says, history shows again and again how nature points out the folly of man. Issues 7 and 8 finally reveal the creation of the scientists, which is Red Ronin, a gigantic mech. He fights Godzilla. Godzilla meanders towards a military base full of exposed nuclear missiles, and he's using his fire breath. I'm going to point out that Marvel actually got this trope wrong. Godzilla has what is always called in the movies atomic breath. Godzilla is atomic powered, he has atomic breath. But in the comics, it looks like fire, it's called fire, it's clearly fire. And the Godzilla cartoon here in America by Hanna-Barbera, that was also clearly fire. So it may have somehow been influenced by that, or maybe they were both bound to call it fire. Maybe somehow fire is less scary than atomic breath. I don't know. But Godzilla has atomic breath. Regardless, it's a pretty cool fight because Rob Takaguchi sneaks into Red Ronin's cockpit and connects with the system, becoming its pilot. And Rob doesn't want to hurt or kill Godzilla, only fighting enough to keep him from the warheads. Ultimately, he's able to point to the desert, and Godzilla understands, walking away. There's definitely a trope in Godzilla movies where Godzilla is friendly towards children, especially in the Showa era, where he went from being an absolute creature of destruction to sort of being an anti-hero. He was friendlier to children. In fact, he even got his own. In Son of Godzilla, he has Manila, a tiny Godzilla that he tries to sort of toughen up by kicking around and teaching him how to fight. It's a little violent, but whatever. And Manila then returns in the terrible movie Godzilla All Monsters Attack, which is actually sort of a dream in this latchkey kid's imagination where he imagines that he's friends with Manila. They even talk. Manila talks language.
Godzilla says that I should learn to fight my own battles, you know.
It's a really bad movie. Don't watch that one. Trust me. Issue 9 is utterly bizarre. Godzilla attacks Las Vegas, and his story of deciding whether to continue to destroy or to leave is intercut with a gambler who can't decide whether to spend his last dime to call his dying mother or try to win a jackpot to help her. I have no idea why the casinos continue to operate while Godzilla is destroying the city. Hold on just a minute. We've got some pretty big gamblers here that are losing a lot at the craps table. Let's just play the odds. Let's stay open. See what happens. The issue ends on a strange note where Godzilla opts to walk away and the gambler opts to stop gambling and call home, where we hear his wife say that his mother died years ago and now she's leaving him too. Issues 10 and 11 are great. Godzilla fights a nuclear-enlarged Bigfoot in the Grand Canyon. Some river rafters keep having terrible luck getting thrown around and hit with rocks from the battle, but eventually Rob flies in with Red Ronin and ends the fight by burying Bigfoot under some boulders. Before Red Ronin can do anything to Godzilla, some aliens on the moon abduct him for the next 3 issues. Godzilla beats their crappy monster, who looks like he was made for a junior high science diorama, but that was just the aliens' test to make sure that Godzilla could fight their enemies' 3 aliens, which are about to invade Earth. They send Godzilla back to Earth, where Godzilla throws a flying rhinoceros monster into Salt Lake City's lake, S.h.i.e.L.D. kills one whose lower body is a helicopter, and then Godzilla burns the last one alive. And that's the only good one, who looks like some sort of evil version of Super Mario's Birdo character that eats and barfs rocks at Godzilla. Aliens with giant monsters pop up in about half of all the Godzilla movies, so that's definitely a trope. Issues 15 and 16 deal with the strangest story in the entire run. 2 competing groups of cowboys where one is stealing the other's cattle, and they team up to fight Godzilla, and Godzilla kills the bad ones. If you've ever wanted to see a cowboy ride Godzilla like it's the rodeo, these are the issues for you. In issue 17, Dum Dum Dugan finally has his first good idea when he remembers that Ant-Man exists, and he sends Gabe Jones to get some shrinking gas from Dr. Hank Pym. While S.h.i.e.L.D. waits to get the gas, Rob pouts about how they all treat Godzilla. Hugh Howard's, a S.h.i.e.L.D. agent that pilots the helicarrier, actually offers to let Rob fly the entire helicarrier just to cheer him up, but Rob sulks and refuses. But since there are hundreds of living people on the helicarrier and this adolescent kid has had no training for flying a ship like that, I think that that's okay. This issue also adds the nerdy Dr. Gladstone Hawkins to the team, a paleontologist who is supposed to be an expert on understanding Godzilla, but who's mostly around for comic effect. The gas works, and Godzilla begins shrinking to the size of a large dog. The cover totally teases that we'll get a giant Dum-Dum Dugan fighting Godzilla, but it's just a quick page or two of Dum-Dum and the team chasing small Godzilla and catching him in a butterfly net. However, Godzilla immediately escapes at the beginning of issue 18. S.h.i.e.L.D. goes to New York to study Godzilla, who is now the size of a bunny rabbit, and Dr. Hawkins instantly drops his cage. Godzilla runs through town and has a fantastic back-and-forth battle with a common sewer rat. Godzilla begins growing again and gets to be human-sized in issue 19, immediately bumping into Rob, who dresses Godzilla in a trench coat and a fedora. Hey, it always worked for the Ninja Turtles. But the second it becomes nighttime, Rob and Godzilla are accosted by muggers, who Godzilla sends running away. Rob takes Godzilla back to S.h.i.e.L.D., and Dum-Dum is about to shoot Godzilla with a tranquilizer dart, but Gabe interrupts the shot because he thinks it's a real gun. Gabe, you're a S.h.i.e.L.D. agent. It's time to learn which gun is which and not attack your superior officer. Dum-Dum tries fist-fighting Godzilla, which is terrific. It even includes a drop kick. But by the end of the issue, Godzilla is about 12 feet tall and still on the loose. The following issue begins with the Fantastic Four hearing about this on the news, and they find Godzilla at the Museum of Natural History. And this is my favorite part in the series because the Thing begins fighting Godzilla and hits him with a living shark. Mr. Fantastic then smothers Godzilla, ending with the Fantastic Four capturing the monster. Issue 21 is Mr. Fantastic's big idea on how to solve the Godzilla problem. He'll just use Dr. Doom's time machine to throw Godzilla into the ancient past. Can't see how that would go wrong. Godzilla ends up in this strange era full of both cavemen and dinosaurs, and initially battles Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur, which is a lot of fun. This carries over into issue 22 when Godzilla looks at Moon Boy and sees him as Rob, allying with them to fight their enemies. Then Godzilla jumps on a glowing magic circle that throws him right back into modern-day New York, where he's back to his normal size. As far as Mr. Fantastic plans go, I would rate this one as less than fantastic. I would rate it somewhere around the last Fantastic Four movie. Pretty bad. Issue 23 has S.h.i.e.L.D. trying to move Godzilla out of Manhattan, and Godzilla just trashing the place. It has one of the series' best moments when he comes face to face with Spider-Man's jerk boss, J. Jonah Jameson, who yells at Godzilla only to be yelled back at and thrown across the office. I love it! Finally, the Avengers get the warning and head out to stop Godzilla. Dum-Dum Dugan acts like this is a headache for him, calling them freako-costumed clowns. But it's not like he's accomplished much, so maybe give Thor a shot. In fact, while Thor's hammer stuns Godzilla, even that isn't enough to stop him. Yellowjacket and Wasp have some success by shrinking, flying into Godzilla's ear canal, and making him so dizzy he falls over. But he recovers, and in the final issue, heads for the Empire State Building like his enemy King Kong. The combined forces of the Fantastic Four and the Avengers are not enough to stop Godzilla. So Rob goes out on a rooftop and somehow gets Godzilla's attention through all the chaos. He then tearfully asks Godzilla to leave, and he does. He just swims away. It is a bit anticlimactic how it just sort of ends with Godzilla leaving. But then again, what else are they going to do? They're not really going to be able to permanently capture or kill Godzilla. Like, Toho Pictures is not going to let Marvel do that. So, I mean, I would have liked to have maybe seen them put him on Monster Island, but I don't think that Marvel had the rights to that. IDW has obtained the rights to all of Godzilla's enemies, and I think that some of their comics are honestly really, really cool, really fun stuff. I especially like the 100-Year War, or is it called the Century War? I think it's called the 100-Year War by James Stokoe. That's really good. That's a fun Godzilla comic. There's a lot of fun comics out there. I think that this one is totally bonkers, but it's so much fun. What was that? Give me a minute, I gotta see what this is.